Hello, found footage fans, and welcome to We Found a Tape. We're a podcast dedicated to all things found footage. Shaky cams, paranormal sightings, and everything with an authentic edge to make it all feel real. My name's John.
And I'm David.
And join us as we hit play and uncover what lies beyond the tape. Welcome everyone back to another episode of We Found a Tape, and today we're continuing with one of the godfathers of found footage movies, one of the main reasons for the big resurgence in the early to mid 2000s and beyond. Today we're talking about Paranormal Activity from 2007.
Oh yeah.
So before we get into talking any further about this movie, let's do a quick synopsis so everyone gets an understanding of the movie beforehand. So a young couple, Katie and Mika, sets up cameras to capture strange occurrences in their home, only to be tormented by an escalating supernatural presence. Their attempts to understand it lead to a terrifying and deadly conclusion. So this is a movie that I was fortunate enough to see in the movie theatre when it first came out. It wasn't quite first day, but I'm fairly certain it was the first week that it came out in the movie theatres, and I remember it was a packed cinema. Everyone was screaming and shouting, and the jump scares were very prominent when I was there. It was a fun time. It was a really great time. One of the memories I have very vividly is walking home at night. I walked from the train station back to my grandparents' house at the time, and I remember I had to keep looking over my shoulder and keep looking to the side because I was convinced that I could hear like footsteps and like branches cracking and like stuff like that. So like it scared the shit out of me at the time. I definitely remember seeing commercials for it at the time and was really excited to go and see it.
Yeah, they definitely didn't push it the same way like Blair Witch, but similar. You know, there was kind of like, crowd reactions from the people that first saw the movie. They did a lot of those as far as like previews or commercials where people were screaming and reacting to, the scary scenes. They would show like a scary scene, all the people reacting in the theater, things like that. So,
yeah, no, I feel like that was one of the more prominent movies to do that, to like showcase. It was like infrared cameras like inside the movie theater to show people, screaming and shouting and covering their eyes and like hiding away and like talking to people after, be like, oh, it was so scary, I was so scared.
Popcorn and candy flying everywhere.
Yeah.
Fantastic time.
I mean, if you have a movie like that, I mean, that's perfect marketing right there. You could just, put clips of the movie theater, the infrared, night vision, show that off, and it just adds to the realism. Because a lot of the movie is in sort of night vision mode anyway, because they're doing a lot of surveillance camera type. This is the sort of surveillance type found footage category that this would kind of fall under. Although there's a lot of cameras with Mika, and he's sort of showing off his sort of video diaries and reactions.
And I think when I first watched this in the theater, I think it was opening week, I don't think it was quite packed because I have this thing where I figured out going to the movies by myself, when I do go by myself, that it's best to go for the early bird special with the old people.
Right.
Because there's hardly anybody in the theater, but actually it was at least half or more full, right? So there were scary reactions for the scary parts, things like that. I didn't have a scary, walk home because it was still daytime when I came out, whatever. I remember watching it again at home, and it's a totally different reaction when you watch it at home in the dark by yourself with the devil's lettuce, if you will. After you watch this movie you have to make that stride to the bathroom, and if you have a fairly decent walk down the hall like I do to get to the bathroom, that is the longest walk you will ever take, because you just feel like something's going to grab your feet, something's going to jump out at you, you're going to hear something. And then we got two cats in the house, so those fuckers make noise for no reason at all, because they're roaming around the house at night like stalkers and shit. And it was just the longest walk to the restroom and back, man. I'm pretty sure I ran, and I haven't ran since 1998. So
Intelligent filmmaking and scares, I think, is what I took away from it. The
Absolutely.
characters themselves, I think really Katie Featherston is the shining part of this movie. She really makes it. Mika, I think we spoke about this beforehand. Mika,
Mika was the dumbass.
Yeah.
Let's just call it what it is. That was the dumbass of the movie. And of course, the villain was the entity or demon. But yeah, after going back and reading that this movie, the budget that it was made on, the fact that it was made in a week in the director's house, no script, anything like all that, they did really well with this movie. The effects, that they used, the shadows, the footsteps, the thumping, movement of objects, things like that. Everything was just so well done with this movie. And that's crazy to think that this was shot on a 15 grand budget, that something so simple can be so amazing. It doesn't need CGI, it doesn't need high-end actors, it doesn't need production crew or anything like that. Just simple, and this guy made something great. I believe the director's name, and if I'm saying it incorrectly, my apologies, Oren Peli.
Yep, that's right.
And yeah, I think that this movie was done so wonderfully, man. Especially for the time that it came out. There wasn't really anything like it, so it came out at a very good time, because Blair Witch had came out, what, 98, 99, 96, 98?
99, yeah.
99, okay, somewhere in there. So I mean, nothing that I can recall that made this kind of impact since then. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was a lot of there was about, what was that, 8 years between Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity. Between then, there was probably a bit of a resurgence where people were finding out that it didn't really take much to make a film, and it led to this sort of oversaturation over that period of time, and like a parody of found footage as we know it today. Again, back in the day, there really wasn't a term. But Paranormal Activity was a movie that came out, and the amount that it was made for, and again the gross box office for what it earned, I think it surpassed the Blair Witch Project. And it was also produced by Blumhouse, which I think at that point was probably one of their most successful movies that they produced. So that sort of sent them into the stratosphere, and we obviously know where Blumhouse is now. They're making a lot of movies. They've dipped their toes into a number of different franchises. So I mean, they're doing well, whether you like their movies or not. They make some good, they make some bad, they make some indifferent, but
yeah, they're all right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, decent. But no, I think that definitely was a hand in pushing that production company forward, having a big boom. This movie in particular, it was a huge influence on a number of found footage movies that we know and love. A few of them include The Last Exorcism, Grave Encounters, Apartment 143, The Bay was one of them as well, The Devil Inside, The Taking of Deborah Logan, Unfriended, and Host. Both by Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity, but a lot of these are specific, influenced by Paranormal Activity, which is awesome.
Yeah, so they're all great movies. I don't know if you've seen them all, but
a good portion. Yeah, I've seen a good amount. Atrocious is another one that I haven't seen. Apartment 143 I'm not familiar with. Taking of Deborah Logan, Unfriended, Host, some of my favorites. Grave Encounters, another great one, is another one of my favorites. So I can see the influence. You know, a lot of the paranormal stuff or the filming techniques. I know for this, like we sort of briefly touched on, he used home video cameras to document the footage that Mika shot for him and Katie, and then also the surveillance type where he set up cameras throughout the house in order to capture these paranormal activities.
Activities.
I'd put it in my top five if we were doing Mount Rushmores of found footage. Paranormal Activity would be up there with it for me for sure.
No doubt, yeah. I would put it in mine. So this movie starts out, with a little caption thanking the parents or family of Micah. I'm gonna say however I want to say it. Okay, she said Micah. I'm gonna say Micah because it sounds right. And Katie, thanking them for the making of the movie or whatever. So that's how it starts out. Starts out with Micah, filming Katie coming home in her little convertible, showing off his new camera, and she's getting mad at him because he was supposed to get a small camera, and he comes out with this huge over-the-shoulder camera, and it's a bickering back and forth, and that's how the movie starts. But right away they make the reason why they got this camera was because things were happening in the house. So he wanted to start documenting it and seeing, if something would come out of it. So that was a red flag there already, because this dude was acknowledging it. For me, this dude, why he's the dumbass is because he egged this thing on to manifest and become something then that was just something that showed up every now and then and actually became something and terrorized the shit out of him for like 21 days. But yeah, that's how the movie starts out. They start talking about, the little things that are going on in the house, the thumping, the scratching on the walls, especially like when the psychic shows up. And of course, Micah wants to be his charming self and start asking questions about, should I use a Ouija board to communicate? No, you don't use a Ouija board to communicate with this thing. What's wrong with you, man? This guy is like simple-minded. Like it's like giving a kid a camera and they want to, go and do kid things with it, if you want to say that. This is already going on, and he wants to document everything. She's hesitant about the whole thing. She's good with it happening in the background every now and then. She doesn't have to acknowledge it or anything. She starts talking to the psychic about this has been happening since she was, I believe, was 8 years old. Her and her sister never really paid attention to her sister. Was more focused on Katie. She mentioned that one night, they were hearing things in the room. She could see the shadowy figure standing over at the edge of her bed. Her sister saw it, but it never acknowledged the sister. It was there specifically, for her. Yeah, and then she goes on to say that off and on throughout the period of time, when she was 13, so on, even if she were to move places, shit would still happen. It didn't matter where she went, where she was at, things were still happening. So obviously this thing was attached to her, and that's what the psychic says. Based on what she's telling him, that this thing is attached to her, has some kind of like fondness of her, and basically wants her. So that's kind of where they left off with it. And he was going to recommend a doctor that was a demonologist to look into this further. And that's how the movie starts, and then we start going down the rabbit hole of night after night. This camera starts picking up things.
Yeah, and some of the stuff it picks up is really creepy. Like the place went crazy when she was standing over him for like hours and hours and hours and hours, and it's just sort of slowly sort of rocking back and forth, and you can hear it like sort of fast forwarding. The whole place was like freaking out when the pictures were like smashed and scratched and like the banging happening. There was a lot of like fun gags for this movie that really were really a lot of fun. You could just picture the amount of fun that they probably had actually making this. It was probably a lot of work, especially considering they shot it over 7 days. It was probably a lot of work to do all of that.
They were definitely working long hours.
Oh yeah, for sure. For me, the ending was, of course, just like for everyone else, the most shocking part. When she gets pulled out the bed the comforter or the blanket being lifted from when she's laying down, and you see it sort of lifting up and sort of pulling at her leg, and like
That was what got me. So when I watched it at home, seeing the whole leg grab, the standing over them, the shadows, but especially the leg grab. I think we all have a fear of that. Those of us that hang our leg over the bed at night always have that fear of something grabbing it, right? So that's kind of like somebody's biggest fear that has their foot hanging over the bed coming to life because you see that her legs hanging off. Something, you hear the thumping, the walking, the shadow, and then you see the leg, and then it's moving, 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 and then here comes the body. She slumps on the floor, kind of comes to, and then grabs her and starts pulling her out the door, and she's just screaming for dear life. Poor girl. And yeah, she's just going down the hall.
Yeah, when she comes out and the door slam. Every time I watch it, I feel like it's just so loud when the door slams and Mika comes like running over the bed to like open it and chase after. There's a few different endings for this one that they filmed.
So there's this one, right, where he's pushed or thrown into the camera.
Yes.
I believe the second one is where she stabs him and then she slits her own throat. I think that's the one that's like on the bonus DVD that never got screened anywhere. And then the other one is somebody enters the house or something like that.
Yeah, the police show up and she gets shot.
Yes, that's the other one. Correct.
So yeah, there's 3 different endings to this one. So I think the theatrical one is just where he gets thrown at the camera.
Yeah, that's a theatrical one.
But no, each of them, like if you have the DVD, I also think as well there's different versions on like any streaming services that show these. I feel like they also have options for different endings of it. So it's a fun little thing and something to get you to rewatch it again. A lot of the DVDs, they'll have like bonus features and it will show you the alternate endings. So if you have those, definitely check them out if you haven't. My favorite ending was probably when he's thrown against the camera because it's so unexpected. Like
right,
it goes quiet for a minute.
Yeah, and then you hear the stomping up the stairs, and then it stops at the top. There's nothing for a little while. You're like, is there somebody there? And then boom, he just flies right at the camera, knocks the camera over. But even though that was scary, the very, very ending is when she's coming up to the camera slowly and she like kind of looks at him, looks at the camera, and then with the face, and then that's where it cuts to black. That's it. That's done. But I mean, there was so much in this movie. I mean, we could be here for hours talking about this movie. All the little things. Going back to dumbass Mika, he went against her wishes. He went against the psychic's wishes not to play with the Ouija board. And what does this dude do? He goes and gets a Ouija board. So he pulls out the Ouija board. They're going out for dinner or wherever they're going, and he's sitting there at the coffee table playing with it. And she is pissed, right? So he decides not to mess with it, leave it there, because the day before he was asking questions around the house where he's walking around with the camera talking to the entity or demon. And he got to the part, and you can hear the hum or the growl right when he got to the part and asked, should I communicate with you or should we communicate with the Ouija board? And that was the only response that was gotten out of all the questions that he got. So he went back and listened to it, and there was a distinct growl when he asked that question. So there he is, sitting at the coffee table. They leave, and it's quiet for a moment or two, and then you hear the boom, 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 that suspense thumping that it had, that creepy suspense thumping. And then all of a sudden you start seeing the planchette move a little bit, and it's moving about the board like if it's spelling out something. And as soon as it stops, boom, it just catches fire. And that's where they leave it. And then they come home, and he's looking at it, and he's trying to show her. She's still not wanting to acknowledge what's going on. She's trying to forget about this shit. And this dude is just egging this thing on and on and on. Dude is so dumb. So dumb.
It's funny because he's just the exact opposite of what you kind of should be when you experience those types of intense paranormal activities. He's literally doing the exact opposite of what you should be doing, which is, not acknowledging, not playing with Ouija boards, not trying to antagonize it, make it angry, and from a character perspective, yes, he's definitely a dumbass. From for antagonize it to the extent that he does, because it's just constant. And she's the smart one. She doesn't want anything to do with it. It's clearly something that had haunted her for her whole life. We find more and more as you progress through the sequels. That's where you find out more information about the backstory and the lore. But from this perspective, from the original, just seeing it, like it wasn't like anything else that had come out at the time. But the simplistic nature in which he made this was just incredible from a filmmaking perspective. Like what he used and what he did was just so good. And he never made, other than Area 51, he didn't make any other movies. He was a producer in a bunch of movies, but Oren Peli didn't make any other movies. He just made the first Paranormal Activity. He was a producer, I think, on quite a lot of them, as well as Insidious, The Bay, Chernobyl Diary. So like he's very much stayed within the horror genre, but he stepped away from filmmaking, directing.
And Area 51, if you haven't seen it, that's a good one. That's one we'll definitely cover here down the road, so be on the lookout for that one. If I was in Mika's shoes night one when this happened, man, I would have, as a Hispanic, from a Hispanic background, old style family, I would have busted out the sage, the holy water. I would have contacted a priest. I would have busted out the sana colita de rana. I would have called fucking John Constantine, dude, on night one to come handle this shit, because I ain't gonna put up with that. But this dude, so fascinated because he doesn't believe, and then by the end of the movie, he was believing. Another scary bit that I think that's worth talking about is he was so into wanting to put the powder on the floor, right? Because they heard the stomping around in the ground, things like that. The footprints, you could see in the camera the footprints being made as the thing was moving, which was a great special effect, man, because it's not like you could see any like feet on a stick making the footprints or anything like that. It was the way that it was done, it was so well done. I really enjoyed that part. And then they go back and it's like a kind of like a three-toed foot, three in the front and kind of like one in the back, kind of like a reptile foot.
Yeah, that's a really good shout. It definitely felt like a weird creature, like demonic to a T. Because that was really good. The effects that they did were really. That's one thing I didn't look up was how they made these effects. It was 2007, so I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a good amount of digital effects that were happening. That was very much in the boom of, digital effects becoming more mainstream and becoming the technology was more advanced around about that time than what it was in the 90s, the 80s.
Right.
So
this thing, when he pulled her out of the bed, even left a bite mark on her back. You remember that? Where he was like with the camera, just like Dr. Pimple Popper, just trying to like inspect the shit out of the bite. He was over there touching it, and oh, what is this?
Yeah, I think for me as well. I think the first couple of nights I probably wouldn't like be taking it as seriously, but as it starts escalating, that's when I'd be like, nope, we need to do something. Especially if you're like really seeing things on these cameras, if you're picking up these types of behaviors and recording these things happening, man, like hell no.
I felt so bad for her because it's not like she could go anywhere because it was going to follow her.
Right.
And then you got this dude on the other side that's just wanting things to happen so he can document it and film it because it would be so cool to have on camera. It's like she was literally stuck between a rock and a hard place.
That added to the scare factor. The way it was shot, it made it feel so real. People who are not normally gravitating towards horror movies can be tricked into believing that it's based on true story. One thing I think is worth mentioning as well is that, which is I think is hilarious, is the fact that Steven Spielberg got a copy of this movie. he got a DVD screener, and he was convinced that it was haunted because after he watched it, similar to me, he was noticing strange occurrences. Yeah. He was so unnerved that he returned the disc in a trash bag, convinced something supernatural was attached to it.
Wow.
Steven Spielberg. That's again something. That's something that you'll be able to use for your marketing. Like if Steven Spielberg's scared of Paranormal Activity, you should definitely be scared of Paranormal Activity.
I would have sent it to R.L. Stein and see what he thought of it. I also read too that it was turned down by a lot of film festivals too.
Damn, I didn't know that.
But overall, man, this movie was something special. There was a lot of things happening. That psychic, man, he comes back, and as soon as he gets into the house, starts feeling the energy. He's all like, "I promise, I'm gonna help you, but I gotta go. You ain't gonna help nobody, dude. You're out the door."
I'd be out of there, man. It's probably if you're someone with intuition like that, if you would have walked in there, it would have felt so heavy.
Hell yeah.
And it would have been like almost suffocating to like walk in there.
That kind of energy will just drain the life out of you, man. Like as far as all your energy will just suck it right out of you. I've never been that in tune with energies and like feeling things like that. I have a couple friends that are like that are really in tune with stuff like that, and they can walk into rooms and there's a lot of negative energy. They have to walk away or walk outside. Not it's heavily draining. So that's pretty crazy.
The ending where Katie lunges at the camera,
right,
apparently was another idea of Steven Spielberg.
Really?
So the original ending was Katie kills herself. It was considered too grim, so they scrapped it. Then, of course, the other ending with the police and her being shot was the other one. But the ending and the most popular one, the theatrical one with Mika being thrown at the camera and then her like lunging at the camera like a beast that she'd been possessed.
Scared him that much, he had ideas. Wow.
Yeah, I guess because it was Paramount. I feel like they did a lot of Spielberg movies, Indiana Jones and all that stuff, right? So, he probably just was given a copy of it, and then was like, oh yeah, I've got an idea. It didn't make me feel as motion sick or as headachy as Blair Witch did. Seeing that in the theaters.
This was more of a stationary camera, even though that there was some movement walking with Katie, things like that. Camera was very still. There was not very much running and shaky camera at all. Of course, I mean, if you compare it to like Blair Witch, where they were running for dear life in those woods. So, I mean, they were running into trees and things like that. So, of course, there's a big difference, but this was crazy.
yeah, man. Now for me again, like we said, this is one of the best by far.
Absolutely.
It was spectacular for me. Another five tapes.
Yeah, absolutely. This one easily gets the 5 tapes. We had a gold tape. I'd give it the gold tape because it's up there with Blair Witch Project in its own way. Definitely lives up to being one of the pioneers of found footage of 5 tapes all across the board, man. For me.
No, that's a great idea. We should incorporate like a golden tape, like if it's truly up there. Golden tape. I think maybe that might be one.
You heard it here, folks. There you have it, folks. The first gold tape rating, the first creation of the gold tape, right here in this episode.
The inception of the gold tape, and I mean, I'm happy for it to have it. One of the best, genuinely. I think I know another couple that I think would be golden tapes, which we'll figure out in different episodes when we get to them. But there's a few that I can think of off the top of my head that I think for me would be worthy of a golden tape.
Yeah, I mean, there are some for me too, and as our listeners are going to find out here that although in these first couple of episodes with Blair Witch and now Paranormal Activity, both of us giving high ratings to these movies because I mean they're such great movies and such influence on the found footage genre. You're going to go down the rabbit hole with this, and you're going to find that our tastes vary as we go down further into different movies. And although one of us will give a high rating, the other one will not give such a high rating. So you're going to see some variances here down the road for sure.
And I'm excited for it. We wanted to start by going through really the highly influential found footage movies. We wanted to start from there and work our way up. We're going to pick some really random ones, a lot of which are going to be found from the likes of Tubi, Found TV. Some random ones on Amazon. Some are bigger budget, some are smaller budget. We don't discriminate. I'm excited to dive into this journey with you, David.
Me too. I'm excited. I'm excited to go down this journey with my brother. So
that's Paranormal Activity for you. We both loved it. Definitely let us know your thoughts. We're always open to hearing any feedback. Some people love the movies that we love. Some people hate the movies that we love, and sometimes we hate the movies that other people love. And that's the great thing about community. So definitely let us know your thoughts on Paranormal Activity in the comments. Be sure to follow us on our social media, on Instagram, where we found a tape. Listen to the podcast where you subscribe to your podcast, whether that is Spotify, Amazon, or Apple Podcasts. We're also available on YouTube at We Found a Tape.
When you go to sleep tonight and you decide you want to watch this movie, do not hang your foot over the bed. If anything, the ending of this movie is going to tell you not to do that anymore, because I don't do that anymore. And I sleep a lot better at nights, and I hope you will take that information and sleep better at night yourself too. So, and don't forget, be kind and rewind.